Hello, and welcome to an academic episode of the Drywall Podcast. I am your host, once again, Nick Harmon. With us today, all the way from Kelowna, BC, we have Doug McKenzie of McKenzie Drywall Inc. But recently, Doug's launched a program designed for drywallers to help become better business professionals. He also held the honor of being Drywall Artist of the Year at TrimTech, so we discuss some TrimTech specialty corner beads stuff. We also talk a lot about TrimTechs, but we do a deep dive into challenges drywallers face in the business world becoming owners of their own businesses.
I had done the same thing that I did before with the residential, and I didn't put all the systems and processes in place with this essentially new company, right? I'd figured out the residential. I hadn't figured out the commercial.
Okay.
So I was literally at that point working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'd be on site for 12 hours and I'd be in the office for 4 hours at night. So 16 hours a day. And I had to make change.
We discussed the concept of markup and margin, but we also discussed the importance of creating these systems to enable efficiency. By hiring a business coach, Doug was able to double and triple his profit margins in the years 2022 and 2023. We unpack all of it into this one little episode. Today's episode of the Drywall Podcast, and all of the episodes of the Drywall Podcast in the month of August are brought to you by SurPro Stilts. SurPro is the name in stilts. They've dominated the stilt space since 1996. They've also procured Stilts.com and hold numerous utility patents and are committed to innovation. But what truly sets them apart is the minds behind the brand. Engineers who don't settle for just good enough, inventors who envision a better way, and their drive to leave a lasting impact on each and every professional lucky enough to own a pair. They are a true champion of the industry. Be sure to check out Stilts.com for more information on X models like the S1X and S2X and the flexion foot system. Also, be sure to check out episodes 99 and 102 with SurPro Stilts expert Brandon Hunter. And stay tuned for a special ice bath giveaway where we'll be giving away one free pair of stilts at the end of the month. The Drywall Podcast can be listened to every Friday with new exciting episodes on your favorite platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, Podbean, and you can watch this interview in its entirety on YouTube. And those episodes drop early on each Thursday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. But for now, Doug McKenzie Drywall Inc. on the 105th episode of the Drywall Podcast. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Drywall Podcast. We got Doug McKenzie Drywall Inc. Drywall CEO Academy. You are in BC, correct?
I am right now, yes.
And what part of BC? Vancouver?
No, I'm in Kelowna, so I'm about 4 hours east of Vancouver. I'm in between the Rocky Mountains and the Coastal Mountains, right in the valley.
It's probably ugly there, huh? Not very pretty.
Oh man, it's gorgeous here. I can't lie.
I'll bet.
The weather's incredible here.
Cool. How do you spell Kelowna?
It's Kelowna.
Kelowna. I would have not got that. I would have guessed C. Very cool. Reached out to Doug because he's starting this cool CEO Academy thing, or he's been doing it a while. We're going to dig into that. but we had a chance to talk yesterday a little bit, and it sparked my memory when you brought up being Trim Tech's Drywaller of the Year, which I, of course, was always bitter about because I wanted to be Drywaller of the Year, as does everybody. But it was a very exclusive crowd, and then now they don't do it anymore. They probably got too much backlash from drywallers or something wanting to get Drywaller of the Year. But I think there was only a handful of you out there. Is that correct?
I think maybe there's 10 or 12, something like that. I can remember when I was young and first starting out in the trade, they used to have the Drywaller catalog. And
Yep.
I would pick that up and see, the drywall artist of the year in there, and always thought, hey, I want to do that one day. And then, one day it finally happened.
You submit your work and then they'll pour over it. I feel like they should have had, like, maybe first, second, third, or some other, they could have done Drywaller of the Month. They could have really milked that, I feel like, a little better than they did. It's like one and done. This is Doug McKenzie's Drywaller of the Year, and it's like,
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
this Doug McKenzie, but
Yeah.
you must have been really using, and I wore a Trim Tex hat for this episode, but you really must have been, and also too, I forgot to mention Joe Koenig, episode number 3 is
Mhm.
really fun, really funny if you get a chance. It's an early episode.
Oh, Joe's
I,
a great guy.
yeah, I'm green, and I know Joe, and he's funny, and it's a very good episode, one of my early ones. But you'll have to check that out.
No, I think the one that really sealed the deal was I did a job actually in my own house. My wife wanted
Okay.
a shiplap ceiling, and I said, "Oh, I'll just do it out of drywall." And I had this idea. I was just going to put up strips of drywall, and I put an expansion bead in between
Yeah,
each strip. So every 6 inches, I had an
great.
expansion bead running across the ceiling. Well, then she wanted beams too,
Of
so I
course.
did. I did beams as well out of drywall, and I put a chamfer bead on the edge of those beams. And the way the ceiling was, it sloped up to the back. It was just high
Okay.
on the one side and lower on the other side. So it was a super high ceiling in the back. So I did this big built up crown detail, and I used just a bunch of different Trimtex products, some of their crown, the chamfer bead, and just tied everything together and just gave it some structure up there to bring it down a little bit. And it ended up turning out really, really well. And I did it through a few areas in our house, and it turned out really well.
Well, if you get a chance, shoot me a couple of those photos. We can do it after the show, and I'll splice those in, and we'll so that people listening or watching on YouTube I can, do a side window where we can check that work out. I feel like I've seen it, but you could probably
Definitely.
go to the Trimtex website too. I think they have Drywall of the Year section
I
where
think they
people
do. They did
people can
before.
see your
Yeah.
work. Yeah, we
Hmm.
did 2 houses back to back, all step bowl.
Yeah.
And like that stuff was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
cases of the stuff.
Yeah.
I sold it to the client, whatever. They liked it. And we did the whole house in fresco. And then I match painted the step bowl. And then we did step return on all the doors.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And then you get mud inside the step, and you've got to try and keep that clean throughout the process, or sand it out later. Or
Yes. Yeah, yeah. We match painted the step before. So we finished it with white mud, 2 coats, and then we match painted it before the fresco. So the only thing we were keeping clean after that was kind of the fresco. And then it was oil-based paint through a rattle can. I can put oil-based paint into a rattle can. I have this
yeah.
machine, which is weird, but
Yeah.
we did all of it that way. And it was fun. It was a cool project, man. And I did
Yeah.
2 houses back to back, and we did reveal
Hmm.
as a decorative reveal underneath a crown molding.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just
Nice.
did a little reveal, and that reveal butting up to the step, and then and then you got the transition piece, to square from the
Yeah.
step. Those are
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. 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 Do you cut them down so they're super small? That's what we used to do. If we did like
Yes.
bullnose up the crown molding, we would take the baseboard adapter, you flip it upside down, and then snip
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
down so it's much smaller. So that transition looks much nicer rather than having
Yeah.
the full baseboard adapter
So
there.
cool. So cool. And on one project, we ran into arch step
Hmm.
and there was to an off angle. And they they didn't make step off. I was like, hey Joe, we need some step off angle. He's like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm not gonna make
They,
step off angle for one job. Like
yeah, yeah.
nobody's using the stuff.
No, that's like we were on a job one time and it was bullnose and we had an outside three-way and I didn't have any three-way caps. And it was, no one in town had them. So it was just standard bullnose.
Okay.
I needed an outside three-way, didn't have one, needed to get the beads on and get them coated. So I actually just cut it and I cut it into a bit of a V and made the two verticals accept it. And then I ended up taking a lighter and just heating it up and kind of bending it around.
Funny. That's
And
cool.
it actually, it turned out better than the adapters that you usually get because you're always touching those things up, trying to get that line to fill properly, right? So when I did that,
Right.
there was no adapter to fill. So it actually ended up turning out really nice. And I just put a little caulking on the corner and it looked great when it was painted up.
Cool, cool. I love talking about the specialty beads because they're kind of rare. Not a lot of people do them, but the people that do them kind of know. Like, and you
Hmm.
kind of have to be, I feel like, outside of the box type thinker to tackle that specialty bead stuff because it's
Hmm.
so time consuming. It's kind of like a labor of love. It's hard to get the money out of it. The builders don't want to do it. They don't want to waste
No,
time with it. You almost have to have like a private
no.
homeowner and
Yeah.
sell it. And
Yes.
that's
Or,
why they stopped. Joe was like, it's too expensive to ship.
yeah.
And we're not getting the return back on the product because it's expensive to ship and then people aren't buying it.
Hmm.
Which blows me away that detail in the drywall space couldn't get legs. That blows me away and it bugs me a little bit.
Did they end up getting rid of some products?
All of them.
Yeah, I thought so.
They
Because
have
I was on their
chamfer.
website recently and I was like, where
Yeah.
did everything go? Like, okay, so that
Yeah.
is what happened. Yeah. I was like,
We
am I not
I
navigating this right? Or like, what's going on here? Where's all these products?
That Siri job that we did, I just took up the outside corner reveal.
Yeah.
So they have outside corner that has an inside 90.
Hmm.
I talked to Joe and I had a case of it like laying around. And Joe was like, dude, you better charge for that because that's like the last box in existence. And I was like, we took it up there. And of course, everybody was like trying to get the job done. They were waiting on me to drive from Albuquerque, trim all the way up to Surrey, British Columbia. And I get up there and we ended up installing Sean Ramsden and Cam. Chad had done a bunch of corner bead install, but we installed and it looked beautiful.
Yeah.
It looks so cool on like a soffit kind of a
Yeah.
thing in
Yeah.
like the dining room, a couple of soffits, but
So I should probably go through my shop then and see what I have laying
totally,
around because I've got boxes and boxes of trim tech stuff that you got to pick up a full box because you needed one more stick to finish a house or something, right?
totally
So
right.
I'd end up having a bunch of weird specialty beads. I know I've got a few boxes that are just like full of random specialty beads that I've had left over from jobs. So I should really go
Um,
through that and see what's there and put something together and
yeah,
use that up.
yeah, or maybe throw it up online and just let people know, but at the very least, hold on to it because I mean, I probably could have got a premium for that box. I mean, it's cool stuff. It saddens me that they don't make it. I think if there was a big job, they would make it
Yeah.
for a job, but I don't know for sure on
I'm
that.
sure they still have the molds and everything for it, right?
Right, right. And they would do a run, but it would probably have to be big enough, maybe if there was a large building or something.
Yeah. And then they
Um,
finally came out with a paperback bead.
yeah.
They were vinyl for years, and actually, when I won Drywall Artist of the Year, and I was down there, I was driving around with Joe, and I said to him, I said, Joe, to be honest, I use a lot of your specialty beads, but I don't use your square beads. I said I use paper because I can get away with 2 coats on paper instead of 3. I said, you don't have to fill all the holes. And then a year or so later, they came out with this paper bag bead and said, finish drywall with less coats. And I was like, oh shit. I guess you were really listening.
You heard it here first. Like, Joe listens to the clients, and he's no dummy. I'm the same way, but I like the way paper tape on corner bead goes on.
Yeah.
The you know, how thin, how shallow it is, but I also like how you can fudge it. It's not just like nailed on. Like, you can move it around after you get it on there. It's like, if you're good with mud, I feel like that paper, like tape on corner bead's the way to go.
I feel they're faster to put on too. Yeah. If you run them through a bead box, or even
they have those hoppers now. It's like,
yeah,
done.
Yeah, either that or put the mud on with a tube. Like, either way, both are equally quick. That's part of the reason we switched over too.
Let's go back to the beginning. So, do you have a college experience after high school?
No,
you didn't go to college.
I didn't make it through high school.
You didn't get through high school? GED?
No.
Beautiful.
I was doing drywall full time at 16.
Wow. So, was your dad like a drywall dude?
No. So I don't know my dad. He took off when I was young. I started in drywall at 13 as a summer job. I wanted Nike shoes, and my mom told me if I wanted Nike shoes, I better get a job. So that's what I did.
What kind of Nike shoes?
I don't think it mattered back then.
Jordans?
Just shoes, not Walmart shoes. They were uncomfortable and didn't last long.
You weren't going after the Jordans.
I can't remember what it was back then.
A decent set of shoes, Mom. Baby needs shoes.
Yeah.
All right.
She told me to get a job. So that's what I did. There was a guy that lived up the street from me that owned a drywall company. I knew what time he'd go by. So I just stood at the end of my driveway, waited for him to go by. I flagged him down, said, hey, I'm looking for a summer job. Do you think you could give me some work? He looks at me up and down. He's like, you're pretty tall. You probably make a good taper. He's like, I'll pick you up at 8:00 tomorrow. And then that's literally how it started. And my first day on the job was with him, and we were boarding 5/8 on a ceiling that was 9 feet. He strapped a pouch on me. He gave me a screw gun. Back then it was still corded screw gun. So I had that on. He's like, okay, put a screw on the gun and then maybe put a couple in your mouth so you can grab them quick once we get it up there. He's like, just grab this sheet. We're going to flip it over our head, walk up the benches, and then put a screw in it. So we flip it over our head. We walk up the bench. I'm like, hey, this wasn't that bad. I push it up to the ceiling. He's like, okay, now grab your gun and put a screw in it. I'm like, I can't move. I'm stuck here. There's no way I'm letting go. I'm holding up the floor, man.
Yeah.
So he had to screw his end, and I was holding my end, and he'd have to come over and tack my end off. And that was my introduction. Until
you figured it out.
Yeah. Now I could probably hold it up with one finger. It's,
Yeah.
Got to work out those muscles.
Yeah. That's tough stuff. That's so cool. Flagged a guy down at 13, though. You had the wherewithal to do that. So it was just you and your mom. Are there siblings?
My mom had a boyfriend too. That was around for quite a while. He had 2 boys, and then I had a brother.
2 boys. You had a brother. Did you lose a brother?
I didn't lose him. No, I still have him. I still have him. Yeah.
Okay.
I just had a biological brother is what I'm saying. So yeah, there was 4 boys in the house. We were all into cars. My mom's boyfriend owned a scrapyard, picking up scrap cars and stuff. So we were working on cars and driving cars and, smashing them up and doing all that from a very young age. I think I was probably driving at 8 or 9.
Okay. And you still like cars?
I do. I don't like working on them so much anymore, but yeah.
You've gotten smart in your old age. Yeah, how old are you, Doug, if you don't mind?
I'm 38 now.
38, young. Cool. Okay. So you say 16, you started doing it full time. So maybe you kept it as a summer job for the next couple of years. You get to be 16. You're like, why am I going to school? I'm just going to go do drywall.
I used to take the bus to high school. I jump on the bus in the morning. I go to high school and I get there and be like, I really don't feel like.
Yeah, this sucks.
So I would actually hitchhike then to the next town over where my boss was working. And I would just show up. And he's like, what the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be in school. I'm like, It's either I, hang out there all day and get in trouble, or I come here and make some money. So I would just go there and make money. He'd, throw a trowel in my hand and I'd work for the day. And
Love
then he'd
that.
give me a ride home at night. And then it just got to the point where like I would kept hitchhiking there all the time and stuff. And I was like, why don't you just pick me up in the morning?
Your
That would
mom's
be a
like,
lot easier.
Doug, I got a letter from the school today. It says that you haven't been there in the last 30 days.
They actually they called because I missed all my exams. And I did miss 30 days of school. I did miss the last 30 days because I was working and I missed all my exams. And then, they didn't really want me to come back. I tried to go back and it didn't really work out. And then
What did your mom
so
say? Did you get in trouble? Was she like, dude, I'm going to kick you out of the house if you don't go to school? Or,
I think I had to start paying some rent that I was working full time. And then my home life wasn't great. So I ended up moving out at 16.
okay.
And I became homeless at 16. I had nowhere to go. I didn't want to be at home, so I went out on
Yeah,
my
but
own.
you had a kick-ass job.
I did, and then I went full time doing drywall. And I ended up living in a hotel, and I was paying I think $300 a week to stay in this hotel, and I was making 350.
That's rowdy,
That's all I
Doug.
made. Yeah,
That is
I think I got $50 a day, and I was working
okay.
7 days a week. So I made 350 a week, and the hotel was 300. So I had $50 left to feed myself. And then I lucked out and I found another hotel that was only $200. So I ended up moving there after a few months, and then yeah, I was off to the races. So I kept working for that guy. That was like pretty much my sole employer. He taught me how to tape.
What was
He
his name and company, if you don't mind?
he's just a very small company in a very
Okay.
small town. It's literally it was just he had a couple employees. I grew up in Ontario in Bob Cajun of all places, very small
Okay.
town. The Tragically Hip has a song about that. Um, his name is
Okay.
just it was Jamie Nichols. It was Nichols Drywall, and I worked for him from the time I was 13 till about I guess 18, 19, somewhere in there. And then from there, I went and worked for another guy for just a small amount of time. I'd had enough of Jamie. We
Sure.
had our run. He kind of taught me how to tape, and
Yeah.
we used to do houses, and we would insulate, drywall, tape, and paint them. So I kind of got trained on the whole finishing
Awesome.
aspect, which was
Yeah. That's great.
really good because a lot of guys they
Yeah.
just learn board, they just learn tape, and like I got to see how all the pieces went together.
Totally.
So fantastic once I ended up going out on my own.
Just
Uh,
knowing board and tape is huge.
is
Like,
huge. Yes.
I feel the same way. Like, I wish I could have spent more time hanging, would be
Yeah.
my regret
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
didn't spend more time getting really fast at hanging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, I worked for him, like I said, till I was 18, 19. Then I went and worked for another guy for like a few months hourly. And then he offered me piecework. I said, well, yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Piecework would be good because I was like the top guy in the company. In my previous company, I was the top guy in this company. As soon as I went, I was like an 18, 19-year-old kid, right? And there's guys there that are in their 30s and in their 40s, and I was running circles around them. So I didn't really fit into the hourly space. So
I
I
was
jumped.
confused about piecework when I first got into it. Now, were you a little nervous to go to piecework because you hadn't worked that way? You're used to getting an hourly check.
I
Um,
was I was excited
yeah,
because
how
I
was
did.
that transition?
It was different, that's for sure. The first house that I took on piecework was 30,000 square feet of drywall. It
Okay,
was it was huge. It had a bowling alley in the
fatty.
basement, like a huge front entrance that was like 30 feet high, and it was quite the job to take on. And I had used flat boxes and corner box.
Okay.
I'd done that, but I always wet taped. I just slap taped by hand. So when
What
I took
what
that,
does that mean, wet taped? I mean, like shit box?
yes, yes,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, I'd
All
always done
right.
that.
All right.
So in taking that big job, the guy that I was subbing off of, I said, "Wow, like this job's pretty big. I think if I had some different tools, I'd be able to do a lot faster and get it done for you a lot quicker." So I proposed to him. I said, "What do you think about you buy me an auto taper and just take it off my check, and that'll speed me up immensely." So he agreed, and
Interesting.
Yeah, he gave me his visa number. I had to
He
drive down
floated
to the,
you. He
he
floated you
did.
in a
He did.
bazooka.
He trusted me, which was crazy. I think he just wanted the tax credit for it, to be honest.
Nah, it seemed pretty beneficial for both of you because,
It
but you
was.
didn't know how to run a bazooka. Why are
I
you like,
didn't,
you were
but I
just like,
thought
screw it. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to learn the bazooka.
to learn it and to be quicker, right? Like I thought this will work. So I knew an old guy that lived in the town I lived in who had owned a drywall company at one point, had a bunch of guys, but ended up going out of business. And I was friends with his son, and I knew that he was looking for some work, and he knew how to run all the tools. So I thought, perfect. I'll get him to come work for me, teach me how to run the bazooka, and then I'll know how. So that's exactly what I did. I got this guy to buy me the bazooka. I had to drive down to the city. It was my first time ever driving on the 401 highway to Toronto by myself. It was
Okay.
crazy. I had the paper map opened up in my truck trying to figure out where I'm going. And we went
Yep.
down to Lou's Drywall, which was like the drywall store back in the day in Canada. It was like the only place you could go to get anything. So we drove down there. I pick up this brand new Columbia taper, bring it back. I hire this old guy. I bring him to work, and he gives me the quick rundown on how it works. And I start trying it, and like, man, I wanted to throw that thing in the lake. We were working on the lake. I wanted to throw it in the lake. Like, what am I doing with this? I could have had this house taped by now, and here I am messing around with this thing. I can barely lift my arms now. I'm
Yeah,
so
because we've
sore.
learned on other podcasts that the shit boxes can be efficient. There's a lot of people that still do it that way.
Oh, they are
And
very.
I joke about it because it's so messy and stupid, but like it's pretty fast. Like it's a fast
Oh
method.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. You're
probably faster than banjo. Like
yes, yes,
yeah,
because you're constantly filling that banjo, right?
but not as fast as the bazooka if you get good. You have to learn.
If
You got to take that.
you
You
know
got
how
to
to do
eat
it,
that.
yes. And it
But
took me time.
you're biting off a chunk. If you're like, oh, I got a 30,000 foot house, I'm gonna save a lot of time by like having my boss buy me a bazooka. It's like
Yeah.
it was smart. It was smart to invest the money, but it was dumb thinking that you would have gotten the job done quicker.
Yes, but I didn't know how hard it'd be to run, right? Like back then there was no Instagram. I'd never seen a video. I think I watched the Columbia video. There used to be a Columbia video where the guy wore the three-piece suit and he would tape and not get any mud on himself. I think it was Columbia's video, or maybe it was Tape Deck. But yeah, there used to be this old video, and
All
it was on a
right.
VHS because the old guy that taught me had this VHS,
Oh
and it
fuck.
was a guy in it.
Go home and put this in your VCR and
Literally,
watch
so
it,
that's what I
rookie.
did. And this is guy with a three-piece suit, and he's literally using the bazooka, and he doesn't get any mud on himself. I'm like, well, that's it, right? I can do this.
I wonder if
So
it's Bernie. I wonder if it's their dad. I'm gonna have to
it
ask Aaron. Like,
it yeah,
where
it
is
might
this
be. I don't know if it was
vintage?
Columbia or Tape Tech. I can't remember, but yeah, it was this crazy video. And I
We're
was
gonna
like,
have
wow,
to
this
do a
is it.
cutaway. We're gonna have to do a cutaway, and the guy with the three-piece suit running a Columbia bazooka, like flounder, perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
See,
easy.
I watched that video and I thought I could be that guy. I didn't know there was this big learning curve and how hard it would be. There was no
Yeah,
Instagram back then. You couldn't ask
right,
anybody, right? Everybody was a gatekeeper back then. Nobody wanted to give anything away,
right.
right?
And now you ask anybody, and they're like, "Yeah, there's a learning curve, but like it's fast once you learn." But yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
gonna invest time learning.
yeah, yeah. So flats were, not bad. Butt joints
Sure.
were pretty good, but like that top corner, man,
Yeah,
that was
that's a
insane. Especially
bitch.
it was all 9 foot too. So I had to
But
learn on a
didn't you
9 foot.
throw this like expert? You hired this expert to come help you. Didn't you throw like run the bazooka a little bit and be like, fuck this. I'm gonna let this guy run it and like I'll learn on a smaller one. No.
He ran it a little bit, but he's like, "It's yours, man. You got to learn." Like, and he would just give me pointers and tips along the
Like,
way. And
hey, I'm
he'd like
paying
pace
you,
behind me.
asshole. Run that thing. I'll learn on the next one.
Yeah, but it was good, man. It was like
Yeah.
the school of hard knocks, right? Like it was
Yeah.
sink or swim, really. And
Yeah.
I did it in that first house. It was wild. There was a lot of tapes that were too short. There was a lot that were too long, but like he fixed them up behind me and just kept giving tips and
Okay.
pointers. And by the time I was done that house, I was better. I wasn't good. And I bet you it took me a year before I was any good with it. And I could actually cut the tape every time that it wasn't too long, it wasn't too short, and I was proficient with it. But
Sure.
there's definitely a learning curve.
There's varying timetables that I've heard with the bazooka. I kind of had a little bit of knowledge of it, but I learned similar situation. The dude I was partners with ran the bazooka. He left, and then I started running it by myself. I was like, it's the only thing I don't know how to do. I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 3 or 4 houses. So I picked it up pretty quick. But I know the learning curve is different for different people on different tools also, but I always just thought that's the way you do it. We're 18, you're with this guy you start doing piece rate. How much are you making piece rate back then?
25 cents a square foot.
Not bad. And what year is this?
That would have been '07. So I started doing piece rate in '07. That's the same year I opened the business. I opened the business and kind of while I was working for this guy by the hour, started doing a couple little side jobs and then started doing piecework for him. My first job that I ever got actually was I had to repair a bunch of plaster in an old farmhouse. It's the first job I got with my business. I think I charged the lady $800 and I was there all week with 2 guys.
Beautiful. What'd you make? Like $20?
I didn't make anything. I didn't make a dime. I was literally there all week, and I brought in people to help me because
just in case you're listening, we are going to get to the part where Doug is a business coach, but obviously not back then.
Not back then. I had no idea what I was doing back then. All I had was a drive and a dream that I wanted to own a business.
That's cool. Why did you want to own a business?
Well, there was only so many drywall companies in town, and I'd worked for all 3
Okay.
of them. That was kind of the next step. And I had some buddies that were like roofers and framers, and they had kind of started their own business doing piecework and stuff. So it just kind of made sense as the next step. Like I was wanting to do my own thing. It was very hard for me to work hourly, especially with the work ethic that I had and, running circles around everybody else. Nobody could ever pay me enough to do what I did hourly. I was at like $25 an hour when I was 18.
Yeah.
So there was only so much further I could go hourly. So it made sense.
I feel the same way. The output that I was producing, and I would write my own ticket. Like there were several times when I would be like, hey, dude, I want to make 25 an hour. I knew how fast I was.
Yeah.
And I would get it because, if you show up every day and you're a good finisher, and this is for anyone listening too, you have value, you're making that guy money. Don't be afraid to ask, to ask for a raise or that's, it worked for me. I had a cool boss too, but it also occurred to me when I was making that money, like if I did this amount of output and I had my own thing or I was doing just fresco harmony, like I could really turn the crank on how much money I was producing. Like my ROI on my physical ability was way off. Like, yeah, I'm pissing away 40 hours a week with all this energy. I should be, less energy, more dollars.
Yes.
That was the way I kept looking at it.
Yeah.
Very cool. So plaster job goes okay. You don't make any money. You obviously learn from that one. You're like, oh, okay, maybe I need to bid a little higher on the next one. Where do we go from here?
So that's when I started doing some more piecework too. And I would do piecework off of other drywall companies. So I had that one guy who I was doing piecework for. I ended up meeting another guy because I would just drive around and look for work. And I would look for houses going up. I would look for subdivisions going in.
Smart.
And I would go in and talk to them and see, hey, who's doing the drywall here?
Yeah.
And I would find out who the drywall company was. And I started picking up work that way as well.
Very smart.
Yeah. So let me back up a little bit when I first started my company and how
wouldn't you go to the job and then find out who the GC is and then go steal the work from the other drywall company?
Yes and no. I was literally a 20-year-old kid.
That's young. Like we've had some young people on what's the thumb all about?
The what? No, I just had my hand raised up.
Did you? I wonder if you can
Yeah.
do. No, no. On my end, there was a little
Yeah.
thumb bubble that popped up.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you meant because I had my hand up like this. I was giving you a thumbs
No,
up. I had my
no.
hand up. I
When
didn't see the thumb.
there's a thumb bubble right now.
Oh,
When you put your thumb up, there's a thumb bubble that pops up on your
does it
screen.
do that? Like it's like AI?
Yeah.
Like it picks up on my
Yes.
thumb? Oh, wow. Must be a setting I have or something.
That's
I wonder
funny.
what other fingers it'll pick up and
Yeah,
do
yeah.
gestures for.
It doesn't do it on my it doesn't do it on mine though.
No,
Just
no, it
but
must be
that's
a
interesting.
setting that I have. So let's back up. So
Sure.
I work for this guy. I finally end up quitting, and it's just like, out of the blue kind of thing. We get into an argument. I quit. I went and worked for these other guys for a little bit. Did a little piecework for them. I go back to work for my old boss. He offered me a bunch more money. I go back to work for him. It
Beautiful.
doesn't work. It doesn't
Okay.
work out.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work out. And it was all just a stupid thing too. This guy loved coffee. He would drink like 6 extra large coffees a day. So
Beautiful.
he was picking me up in the morning to go to work. He wanted to go into town to the Tim Hortons. I said, dude, you've already picked me up an hour late. Like, let's hit the gas station on the way to town. You need gas anyways. No, I want my Tim Hortons coffee.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You don't want that gas station coffee.
I know, but he was supposed to pick me up at 7. He showed up at 8:30, and then he would want to work till like 8 o'clock at night. So it was like,
Okay.
he had these crazy hours, right? Like I hated it. I wanted to get there
Yeah.
early. He wanted to get there late. I wanted to leave early. He wanted to work late.
Yeah.
We got into a fight. I literally jumped out of the van in the middle of the street, quit, came home, and just started making phone calls and called other drywall companies I knew, started looking for piecework, and was going back out on my own. And that started. I literally, at that time, I was 20. I didn't even have a car then. I was relying on my boss to pick me up every day. Didn't even have a car. So I get a job. It's that small little plaster job. I had to borrow my mom's car to go do it.
Okay.
So I go and I do this job. I don't make any goddamn money. So then I'm
Yeah.
on the hunt for more work. So I'm borrowing my mom's car and I'm just driving around looking for work. I would borrow her car evenings and weekends. I go around. I had some business cards made up and I got some 2x2 vinyl signs made.
Like you had hustle, and
Yes.
that's
Big
paramount.
time.
It's like number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I was living on my own. Right. And at that
Yeah.
point, actually, my brother lived with me too. My
Yeah,
brother moved in
dad,
with
no,
me.
no dad
So,
helping you out, no trust
yeah.
fund that you get to dip into. You just had
Yeah.
you had to make money if you
I
wanted
did.
to have a roof over your head and food to eat. That's
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
incentive.
Yeah, 100%. So I just drove around. I looked for work and it worked out. I would drive around. I'd see a foundation going in. I'd see a driveway going in. I'd see a house being framed. I would just stop in. Hey, do you have a drywaller? And if they did, cool. I would call the drywaller and say, hey, do you have any work for me? I just kept creating relationships and getting piecework from people. And I'd get the odd small job, mostly like patch repair stuff that other guys didn't want to do. People would call me for that. Well, nobody else would call them back. I would, and I would make great money doing those little jobs. And it was really good training too on,
Right.
fixing nasty butt joints and stuff that homeowners had boarded. So it was good in that sense. And I just kept growing on that. So my goal was to have my own subdivision. That's what I
Okay.
always wanted, because where I learned was in a subdivision. My boss had a
Yeah.
subdivision that we did. And that was my goal. I was like, if I could have like 5 or 6 of these things, I could have
And you
crews.
would you have a vision of like you would get the subdivision, but then you would have a couple of teams underneath you that you were subbing out to?
That was the vision. Yes. And I had that vision when I was 15 working for my boss. I was like,
Okay.
I don't really like the way you're running a business. I actually told him when I was 15 that one day he was going to work for me. He hasn't yet. He's been very close, but he
Nice.
hasn't yet. So it was my goal though, to have like subdivisions and have crews running everywhere and like have all the work all around. And I stuck with that vision and I kept doing it. So went on my own at 20, started doing these smaller jobs, started doing piecework for other drywall companies. And I would hit subdivisions everywhere and try and get to the GC and try and get that work, or I would go and sub off the drywall company that had it. So my first subdivision I got was through a drywall company I was subbing for. The GC approached me and said, hey, like you're here doing most of the work. Do you want to price some of my houses? So I did. I was 22 and I ended up getting it. So I had my first subdivision at 22.
Beautiful.
The builder was super cheap. I was young, didn't know what I was doing, had a stupid low price. It didn't last long with him. we didn't really vibe once it started going,
Yeah,
but I
but
still
the
had
way
my
I
first site.
it's always like that you're getting paid for your education is
Yes.
too another way that like I would look at it like, well, even if you're making wage, you're still making
Yeah.
wage and you're getting all of this knowledge. You're like
Yes.
soaking up this knowledge about, oh, okay, this is how I'll do it next time. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
smart.
And
I
that's,
think it's smart to not be greedy out of the
yeah.
gate.
I wasn't. I was the cheapest guy in town. I just wanted work. I wanted
Yeah.
experience, and I wanted to be able to take a picture of something and be like, I did that, right?
Yeah.
And that was awesome to be able to say I did that job, and that could get me the next job.
Mhm.
So I had that first subdivision at 22, and then from there, it didn't work out with that guy. So I was back doing piecework, doing some of my own custom homework, and then the jobs just started getting bigger in the piecework aspect. So instead of doing houses, now I look for apartment buildings going up, and I would just go find apartment buildings, find out who the
Why
drywaller
would
was.
you why would you want to do apartment buildings? Just more better piece rate on
More
commercial?
volume. I just wanted more volume
Volume.
because I
Yeah.
could crush houses, and like I didn't really like houses that you had to drive all over the place. I did a lot of custom homes and stuff, so it's
Smart.
like
That's
this
smart.
house is 40 minutes that way. Well, the next one's 30 minutes this way, and then to like bounce back and forth, I'd try and do two
Yeah.
houses a week. Was feeling I couldn't do it, so I
Mm-mm.
wanted something bigger, right? That's why I always wanted a subdivision, because it was just like house after house after house,
Yeah.
and I couldn't really find that. I would just get like a house here and there in subdivisions. So it didn't really fill my cup. So I started going after apartment buildings, and I would go and figure out who the drywaller was. I called them and say, hey, like I'm looking for some work. I'd like a whole floor. And they're going, a whole floor? Like, how many guys do you have? I'm like, well, it's just me and another guy. I'm not giving you a whole floor. Like, why don't we start you off with a unit and we'll see how that goes? So I remember the first apartment building I ended up getting on. It
Yeah.
was in Peterborough. It was called Anson House. It had a name. It was called Anson House. And
Okay.
I met this guy, and like I said, I asked him for a whole floor. He thought I was crazy. It was just me and a partner. He's like, "How about I give you a couple of units to insulate, and we'll see how you do." So we go in to insulate. He's got 6 or 8 hourly guys on one side of the hallway, and then me and my helper on the other side. I did 6 units. They did 4.
Yeah. And
So
those guys were popping their head and they're like, hey, you guys slow down. Slow
yeah,
down, man.
at the end of the day, they were asking like, "How the hell did you guys do that?" I don't know, man. This is how I work. Like I'm here on piecework. I want to make money. So, so then I ended
Uh,
up I boarded that floor as well, and then I ended up taping the
nice.
whole. I taped the whole building, and then I
Okay.
created a relationship with that guy, and I worked for him for probably 6 8 years
Cool.
and taped all his stuff. So through that guy, I found out about this subdivision that was going on in the same town. He was pricing it. He submitted a price because he heard that the guy who had it wasn't doing a good job and wasn't keeping up. So he ended up submitting a price for it. He didn't get it. His price was too high. So I tried calling directly to the builder, and they said, no, 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 that guy's he's pulled up his shorts. He's doing pretty good now. So I'm like, okay, well, he's probably not going to do that forever. So here's an opportunity. So I went and found him, and I started doing piecework for him. And he was paying me 20 cents a tape, 20 cents a board. Terrible, terrible rates. But I saw an opportunity that maybe one day I could take over what he was doing. And it didn't take
Okay.
long. Within a year, I had like 10 guys working for me doing piecework for him. And
Yeah.
I was, boarding and taping most of the houses.
And if
And
you're
then,
even at that rate, if you're doing the volume and you have the
yeah,
dudes, you can still turn a profit.
I did. I worked super hard. I was,
Yeah.
12 hours a day, 6 7 days
Yeah.
a week. And
Yeah.
then I'd have people helping me too, right? But I was working the hardest out of everybody. So I was making a little bit of money, but not what I should have been making. So that guy kind of started to disappear. And because I was taking care of everything.
Right.
And I ended up having to like buy mud to finish jobs and go pick up sheets of drywall so I could finish what we were short. And
Yeah.
he's nowhere to be found. So then he would come and start a couple of houses and then not finish them, then ask me, oh, can you go finish them? So the contractor ended up seeing this and said, like, why are you going through this guy? Why don't you just come work direct for me? And then that's exactly what I did. So I ended up hooking up with them, which is Mason Homes, and they were a big builder in the area. So I had that site. Well, the next year they opened another site, and the year after that they opened another site. Next thing you
Done.
know, by the time I'm 25, I have 3 sites and I'm doing over 100 houses a year and have like 30, 40 guys.
Yeah. Did you like that? Did you like that level of commitment and busyness
Loved it.
yeah, because you're
Loved it.
young and ambitious. You got 30
Yeah.
guys, you're just turning the crank, and you
Yeah.
like managing all that money. Was that part challenging, the business side of it? And then this will be a good segue into, what you're working on now. But I mean, that curve there where you go from, making X amount where it's easy to pay a couple guys to paying
Yeah.
30 guys. Now you're putting food on the table for families. That's a different
Mhm.
model.
It was totally different. So luckily my wife's been my partner since day one. She's always handled the money side of things. I found work, price work, did the work. She handled the money and all the paperwork and insurances and things like that. So
That's a nice feature too. Some people have that,
yes,
some people don't.
you really need that.
Is she accounting inclined? Does she have like
Yes.
sort of an accounting background, or is that
No,
like,
no, she doesn't. She
no,
doesn't.
she just
No.
jumped into it and started doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doug's busy. I'm gonna like
Yeah.
jump into this and start tackling it. And she learned
Yeah.
that side of the business. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were so young and started so small. We just, kept learning different things and
Yeah.
figuring it out along the way. Right. There was no school, there was no coach back then. So we were
Right.
just on our own and trying to
Right.
figure it out. Right. So
Right.
yeah, it was crazy. And I had no idea how to price work. All I was doing was taking my piecework rates and adding a little bit and being like, well, it's better working for that guy who can't even pick up the mud for the house. I might as well pick up the mud and make a couple cents more.
Right.
But that's not how you run a business.
Mm-mm.
So it took me quite a while to realize that I had all these guys and I was doing all this work, but I wasn't really making any money. I was doing better than working hourly. I was doing better than working on piecework,
Yeah.
but I wasn't living up to my full potential of running a business. So it was in.
Do you start thinking in terms of scalability? Like, how do
I was at my
how do I
max.
scale?
Like I
Yeah.
had 3 sites, everything ran through me. I was estimating, I was the project manager, I was the foreman, I was making all the material deliveries. Like I was doing everything, right? I couldn't take on anymore. So I had to figure out a way to relieve some of my time. And I didn't know how to do that. I thought I'll just do this forever because, that's how most companies go. Most contractors I've seen, that's how they work until they're 70 and then they're just done, right? Like there is no real business. Everything kind of just goes through them.
I once heard recently about like richness, like somebody was asking this guy Jesse Eisner, like I follow him on, he's pretty popular, but I follow him on like Instagram. He's like, self-help type guy, but different types of richness. One of them being like you have your health
Mhm.
richness, like that's a big one. You have money richness. You have, but you also have time richness is also one of the things too. And a lot of
Yeah.
people forget, like, you're not getting any of that time back. And you ask anybody that's like super wealthy, Fortune 500, like, time's a big deal,
It is.
especially to the guys that have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So neither here nor there, but you're starting to look at this aspect of time differently. Like how do I
Yeah.
alleviate some of my time so that I'm not spread so thin?
Yeah. And I had no idea how to do it because there
Yeah.
wasn't enough money to hire somebody else to do what I was doing. So
Right.
I lucked out. I priced this big job. I priced this apartment building, which was in town. And I closed this thing and I get a call from somebody. And he says, hey, I heard you priced that job. I know 3 other guys that priced it and they say you priced it at cost. And I went, the hell do you mean I priced it at cost? What does that mean? So I went down a rabbit hole. This was 2014.
Yeah.
I've been in business for 7 years. I go down this rabbit
Wait,
hole.
who was this guy that called you? Like just a concerned citizen?
No, his name's Mike Denis. He was a taper that worked for me. And he just knew some other guys from drywall companies. And like we were kind of buddies and he used to do a lot of work for me. And he called me and said that. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? So I go down this rabbit hole and I start researching. How do you run a business? How do you price work? And I got on this like markup and margin thing. And I figured out what markup and margin was and how to calculate my overhead and what my costs were and how much I should be adding on top of my work. And then literally overnight, I went, oh shit, I'm not making any money, right? Like I'm making a couple bucks here more than I would be doing piecework, but there's nothing sustainable. I can't hire more people. I can't do more things. I'm never going to grow this. I need to make a change immediately. I had just had my daughter. She was like just born around this time too. It's 2014. So I just had her as well. And I was like, I need to spend more time at home with my family and not be working 15, 16 hours a day doing what I'm doing. So how do I do that? So I was like, I need to change my prices. I got to up my price. And I got to start doing different types of work too. So I started pricing some commercial work.
So raise prices and diversify.
Diversify. So that was kind of my plan. Diversify. There's more money in commercial because I'd worked on apartment buildings. I had done piecework for these other drawers. I knew that they were actual companies that were making profits. Whereas residential, I could tell the guys in residential, it's like a race to the bottom, right? Where the commercial guys, I can see they're building companies and they're actually doing something here. So I start pricing commercial work and I raise my prices in the residential. I go to the builder and I tell them, hey, I've realized I'm not making any money. I'm sure you already know that. My prices are super low. That's why you've got a 25-year-old kid here doing your 100 houses a year, because I'm the cheapest guy in town, right? And I'm doing a really good job for you. You're like kind of taking advantage of me, but I get it. That's business, right? So
wait, this is your pitch? Hey, I'm going to raise my prices, and here's why. I've been giving you too good a deal.
No. I didn't really say that. I just know that in my head. But I told him. Okay. I told him. I said, Mr. Mason, honestly, you've given me the opportunity of a lifetime. But I've got to start creating a company for the future, and I'm not going to be able to do that working at these rates. So I do have to raise my price, and I'm sure it'll be comparable to what other people are at. I need to raise that very soon. So let's do that. And I said, if you can't pay these prices and you don't want me to continue doing your work, that's cool. I'm going to start looking for other stuff and make something else happen. Then if you want me to stick around, I'll stick around as long as you want. I'll work for you forever. If you want me to just stick around till you find somebody else because they're cheaper, I can do that too. But like I've started to, get some opportunity in other places that I can really capitalize on. I win a couple commercial jobs in that same time frame and realized, holy shit, I figured out markup and margin. I put my markup on these commercial jobs and I win them. And I'm like, how did I just do that? I'm making so much money off this one job, right? So it all just kind of was divine timing that I raise my price with this guy. I start getting some commercial jobs.
Yeah.
He's an older dude. He gets pissed. He calls other people for pricing. He ends up getting a guy to come in and he's 5% more or 5% less than my new price. So he ends up going with him.
Yeah.
And gets rid of me after I did all the service work for free, didn't charge for any of that, like nothing. This guy comes in, I hear within a year, he's raised his prices like 15, 20%. Because he's got an understanding now of what it takes to do the work. So that's here nor there. So I've got a bit of commercial work. It comes to an end with this. You had
to risk that though to shift. So it wasn't plus you don't want to be working for that guy anyways. Like, those guys, these builders that beat up subs. Yeah. You do not want to work for those assholes. This isn't about building an empire on the backs of others. This is about working with people that understand value. You will find good people. If you're a good person and you're honest, you will find good people that will pay you what you're worth. Yes. You don't have to settle for these dickheads. Like, stop me if I'm wrong. I've been there. And it's like I had a builder not pay me $200 and we took him to court. Like my friend is like an attorney and he was like, I'll write him a letter. And I was like, dude, I was like, that guy, he thought it was funny. And we both did. But like, he's like, he ain't going to pay. Hall of Fame, Parade of Homes builder. Yeah. Like, tooth and nail, dude. He probably spent 10 grand on attorneys fighting the same. The judge ended up throwing it out. Yeah. That's and you know what? I didn't have to work for that fucking dick ever again. Like what an asshole. $200.
That's kind of how this guy was. There was always a little something that I wasn't getting paid for and beating me up on my price. And his thing was he did 100 houses a year. So it was always, he did this to all of his trades. Well, I'm giving you all this work.
Yeah,
so
you're blessed. Like, you're blessed to come work for me.
Yes,
Yeah.
your production houses that are like 3 inches at a square are just like fucking incredible to drywall.
Yeah. And you're making $500 a house. Like, oh,
Yes,
thank
yes,
you. Thank
yes.
you.
And then it was always the same thing too, right? Like the stairs aren't in, there's no heat,
Yeah.
there's a crazy closing date. So I've got 3 days to board and tape a house and like
Yeah.
just the same old bullshit. I'd had enough, especially for what I was getting paid. So I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need to raise my prices and be able to hire the people. So he didn't get rid of me right away. He actually let me raise my price while he was looking for somebody else. And
Right.
I literally systemized that business in about 3 months. And I went through my head and downloaded everything out of my head onto checklists and spreadsheets. And I trained 2 guys how to go through houses, how to check them before we started, because it was always the same problems. So I created a checklist.
Yeah.
I trained somebody else how to do it. Go through the house, go through the checklist, figure out what's wrong, give it to the super, tell them to get it fixed before we start.
Right.
Life changing.
Huge time
Life
savings,
changing.
because now
Yes,
you're not spinning your wheels, dude. If I'm on that
exactly.
house, I want to be finishing it. I
Yes,
want to be
yes,
working. If I show
yes.
up, if I have 2 guys show up at that job at 7 a.m., that shit better be ready.
Yeah, yeah. So that's was my job before. Was I just ran around and made sure shit was ready ahead of my subs and everything, right? I was all constantly just trying to make sure things were ready so that I didn't have to pick up the bullshit after the subs were gone. So I was kind of
Mm-hmm.
just saving myself and making sure that they could complete the whole job. So I trained somebody else how to do that. Well, then you also got to check behind these subs, right? And make sure they did their job properly and that they're complete before they get paid. So again, I just created a checklist. This is everything that I look for, guys. I had a guy that would go through after the borders were done, after the tapers were done. They go through the checklist, make sure everything was completed. They'd sign off, and then the subs would have to give the completion slip with their invoice and send that to my office. So
Smart. That's a
I
good
just
one.
started creating a bunch of little
As long
systems.
as long as your checklist guy isn't too big of a dick, because
Yes, they can be.
yeah, because
Yeah,
if you're because I can see the checklist guy is like, oh, this sub's an asshole. I'm gonna like fuck with him a little bit, and then all of a sudden
yeah.
you have static amongst the ranks.
Yes, yes, which was hard because I was a bit of a stickler because I was a really good taper and I wanted
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
perfect. So it was hard to have that fine line. So
yes,
I just created systems and processes around
smart.
running that site, right? Like we used to have lots of trouble with borders missing, cutting out plugs and attic hatches and bathroom fans. And I'd get the call when the electrician's there trying to do the final.
Yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
painted. Electrician's there trying to plug and switch. I get the call, hey, we're missing 6 plugs in this house. There's no attic hatch cut out. We don't know where the bathroom fans are. I'm like, oh, fuck. So I got really good
And that's on the hanger, man.
it is, but they're long gone. The place is painted now, right? So it's on me. I get the call. I race over there, and I got really good at finding buried boxes. I could do it a lot of times without having to
I
do repair.
bet.
Like I'd be like feeling the wall for the bulge, and so I did that all the time. Then finally, I get the bright idea. I'm like, why don't I get ahead of this and mark all the plugs on the floor? And I started spray painting them on the floor before I delivered the board. I would go through when I did my check and made sure everything was ready. I spray paint all the plugs and switches, attic hatches, everything on the floor. So that became part of the checklist. When the borders were done, my guy would go in and make sure the paint marks all lined up with something. If there's no box there and there's a mark on the floor, hey, you missed a plug. Come fix this now before I sign off on this.
You're slowly developing a system or a curriculum rather that you could implement or you could maybe bestow onto others.
Yes.
Or you're thinking to yourself, God, these systems are fantastic. They work excellent for me. How could I leverage this, or how could I share this with other drywallers so that they don't have to go through the same turmoil and time investment that I had to go through? How can I put this into a step-by-step process? And
yes and no. I actually did this in 2014. So
okay.
I had no plans of ever coaching or doing anything. This was literally just to save myself and buy back my time. Right?
Sure, but I'm asking specifically, when did that blossom of an idea start to occur to you?
To do the coaching and pass this off to other people?
Yeah.
That's more of a recent thing.
Okay.
So
all right.
Once I systemized the whole residential thing, I was doing the commercial work myself. So I jumped over to commercial, and then I was able to train people on the residential side. And like, I had that down to a science. Everything was super simple and figured out. I knew what markup and margin was now. I knew how to estimate because I had, priced hundreds of thousands of houses, right, in this subdivision. So I switched to commercial and started doing that.
Can you very quickly just give me a quick definition for markup and margin? Can you do that?
I can. Yes, no problem. So markup and margin. So margin is your net or gross profit margin.
Okay.
So let's start with the gross profit margin. That's how much you're left over with after you pay all of your bills. Okay. And then your direct bills, which would be your materials and labor and equipment. So how much are you left over with all of that? So out of that, then you have to pay all of your overhead expenses, which is, having your trucks, gas, insurance, your office, things like that, right? So how do we calculate that number? Well, first we need to add it all up, what those expenses actually are. And then we figured it out as a percentage of our sales. So let's say you're going to do $1 million in sales and your overhead is $200,000, right? Okay. It's 20%, right? Okay. That's a 20% margin. So most people, if they were to get to that point, they go, okay, I've got to add 20% to my jobs and I'll be great.
200,000.
Sorry, 200,000. So if they add 20% to their jobs, they're going to cover that cost, right? That's not the case. Okay. Because you need a 20% margin. So if you mark up $100, 20%, you come out to $120. If you take the $20 in gross profit that you're making now and you divide that by 120, it's not 20%. It's 16%. Okay. So you come up 4% short. And that was mind-blowing to me of how all that works. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's pretty confusing. It is confusing. I know. I need to do a training. I actually have a training on it, video training on it. It's, okay. It is hard to explain to people, but your markup and margin is totally different. Your margin is what you're left with at the end of the day. Your gross margin, your markup is what you add onto your jobs to get that margin. I have a calculator I've created to help calculate that. I've got a video training on it. Love it. Yeah, cool. Yeah. But once you realize that in business, it changes everything. Okay. A lot of guys like to talk about going rates and, what's this guy charging and that guy charging. Like, none of that matters. Every business has different expenses. Sure. So you have to figure out your own margin and markup. You can't base it on somebody else's business and someone else's expenses. You have to figure that out on your own. A lot of guys will just go and price work at $1 a foot and think, that's the going rate. But what do you actually make off that? And is it enough to cover what you're doing, right? So sure. Once I figured that out, that was huge. I figured out markup and margin. I started to put systems and processes into my business. I knew how to estimate because I priced so many houses by that point. So I switched to commercial and I started doing commercial work. The residential is like phasing out. I ended up landing a job that was 60,000 square feet. It was a retirement home. It was like $2 million job. Okay. So I'm like 27. I get this job. Massive job. I had no business probably taking it, but I did. And you had the manpower though to do the job like that. I was pulling guys from my residential sites to help me on my commercial stuff, right? So I was learning how to frame. I'm learning how to do grid. I'm learning all these things, and I'm trying to pull guys from my residential and do the board and tape for me. And so I get this big job, and literally I get it, and then a couple months later, the residential guy pulls the plug, and the residential's done. So now I literally have one job. And that's it. I went from having 100 houses a year, lots of work, to I've got this one commercial job now. Why did the residential guy pull the plug? That other guy was 5% cheaper. So he slowly kind of phased me out. And then I was done, which, looking back, was the best thing that ever happened to me. So I've got this big commercial job and I get into it. We start doing work. Things are kind of going well. And then they start not paying. And they owe me like $600,000 at a time. They're like two draws behind. Yeah, every rose has its thorn. We've had other podcasts too where we've talked about commercial and then waiting to get paid on commercial. Yes. That's a whole different animal. The residential was good because I got paid quick. That guy paid every 2 weeks. Invoice on the 15th, get it on the 30th deal. That was good. Then I switched to this. It's every 30 days. Well, now they're 60 days behind. They owe me like 600 grand. This is my introduction to commercial. So it ends up, I have to get a lawyer. I lean the job in the end. They owe me like $300,000. And we ended up actually getting our money because we put the lien on and we did everything the right way.
Good.
We get our money and learn a lot on that one job.
Yeah.
A lot.
And then that giant builder's like telling everybody, oh, don't use these guys. You know, they're not willing to like wait 6 months to get paid.
It was actually part of the legal agreement that we weren't allowed to talk about each other after the fact.
Beautiful.
They didn't want us to run their name through the dirt with their payment schedule and everything. So it worked out well. They couldn't talk about us either. So we finished that job, and then, hey, I've got no more residential work. I'm full-blown commercial. This is 2015, and I have literally done commercial ever since. And it's been incredible. So fast forward, I built up the commercial the exact same way I built up the residential work. You know, I started and just kept learning things along the way. I had no teacher. I had nobody to bounce ideas off of. It was just me and my wife figuring things out as we went. So fast forward to 2020. I've been doing commercial now. I got stuck.
Introduce COVID.
Introduce COVID. Yes. So by this point, I have grown the commercial business into this big monster. I had probably 20 guys. I had lots of subs, and I was stuck at 2 million in sales a year. I could not get past 2 million in sales. And I could not get out of the business.
But like 2 million in sales, like you can't like be like, okay, like that's good. I don't want to grow it any farther than that. I'm just going to keep turning the crank on 2 million and squeezing profit margins, you know, by refining my business model. That didn't occur to you. You want bigger, more, better.
No, it wasn't the fact that I wanted bigger and better. It was the fact that I was literally working 16 hours a day to do it. I had just put so much on myself. I had done the same thing that I did before with the residential, and I didn't put all the systems and processes in place with this like essentially new company, right? I'd figured out the residential. I hadn't figured out the commercial.
Okay.
So I was literally at that point working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'd be on site for 12 hours. And I'd be in the office for 4 hours at night. So 16 hours a day. And I had to make a change. To make a change. It's COVID. My daughter's older now. She's asking why I'm not home for dinner, why I'm not tucking her in at night, where I am on the weekends. Like I'm just constantly gone and working, right? I just worked way too much. So, and then it's COVID and I have to make a change. I now have 2 kids who can't go to school. And my wife and I, well, she's still doing the money and all the books. Yeah. So we're almost fighting over who's going to go to work. Someone's got to stay home with the kids. We've got no family help or support. Yeah. Who's going to work? Do I go and price jobs and do jobs? Does she go and pay bills and do that portion? Yeah. I needed to make a change. So I didn't know where to start. I knew I needed to systemize things, but like it was such a big beast at this point. I didn't really know how to wrap my head around it. The residential was easy, but this was like a whole different type of business. So I started to look for a business coach, somebody that could help me implement things into my business. I had heard about business coaches helping other people, not in the contractor world, but just like, you know, I've seen things like on TV where a big law firm or something hires a consultant and they come in and they implement a bunch of things in their business and help them. So I started to look for something similar and I couldn't find much. There wasn't a lot out there. I had one guy who said he was a drywall consultant. He wanted to charge me $10,000 US to come and help me out a month. Sure. But wouldn't tell me what he was going to do. I didn't really know what it included or what we were going to work on or anything. So that didn't work out.
Hey, forget about it. Give me 10 grand a month. I'm going to make what it was. You won't regret it.
Yes, it wanted me to pay for his flights in and pay for his hotel. And I'm like, well, have you worked with anybody else? Like, have you ever ran a drywall company? Yeah. Like, I couldn't really get much out of him. So I continued to search. What I did find was there was some generic contractor coaches. So I signed up with one. This was in 2020. I signed up with this generic contractor coach. Yeah. So in 2021, I start implementing everything that he's kind of taught me, like in 2020, 2021, started implementing things. And I create like an employee handbook. I create a company manual. I
Cool.
create job descriptions for
Okay.
the positions I actually need to hire, because before I hired friends and family, and there was no
Yeah.
set thing in the office of what we were doing. It was just kind of putting out fires. So I started putting all these things into place. Well, in 2021, I hired 5 people to replace my role. It literally
Okay.
took 5 people to replace what I was doing. So I hire these 5 people and I start to train them. I keep my sales the same in 2021.
Okay.
I start to train these people and I start to put processes and systems into place. And next thing you know, in 2022, we doubled our sales. And then in 2023, we tripled.
Okay.
Because instead of me estimating in my spare time, I now had somebody estimating full time. Instead of me being the project manager for little bits and pieces when I needed to, I had somebody doing it full time. So all these 5 positions that I hired, I now had somebody doing full time. I couldn't stop the growth. It literally just evolved. And I couldn't hold it back. It was crazy. We just kept getting jobs, and we kept creating systems and processes and figuring things out. So that is what has led me to do what I'm doing now with the coaching. It's my own trials and tribulations and experiences and not having help,
but also success. Like, so
success.
So maybe in this commercial space, you hire this. Can we give a shout out to this coach that maybe inspired you early on?
Oh yeah, the coach that I had was Profit for Contractors, and they were great. You know, I found them online. I went through their program. They had lots of great stuff in there. The problem was it was generic. And
it wasn't really drywall.
It wasn't drywall at all, right? It's plumbers, electricians, carpenters, general contractors, like everything, right? So it wasn't, I could only get bits and pieces.
And this program, though, not only inspired you to double and triple your profit margin from 22 to 23, but it inspired you to be like, I should start a program specifically for drywall. And there wasn't anything like that out there.
Yes, 100%. So yeah, the drywall specific thing is amazing, right? Nobody else is doing it. And I feel like there's a huge need for it. There's a huge need for help in the industry on the business side of things. Like if we rewind back, you know, I had a guy teach me how to run the taper.
Yeah.
I had a guy teach me how to run a trowel. You know, it's pretty easy to get guys to teach you how to do the trade. But when it comes to the business side of things,
but I feel like you're taking it to another level. So what was the exact date you start Drywall CEO Academy? That's what it's called?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a very recent thing. I kind of had the idea last September. Like I was in another coaching program. And I was just kind of in there, and I was like, you know, this doesn't really do much for me for what I'm doing. And I just got this idea, like there's probably a lot of other people out there that would like coaching and maybe have tried generic courses, and they're in the same boat as me. Like this isn't really doing anything for me. So I had this idea, well, what if I helped the person that I used to be? And I created a program for them. And I shared everything that I've already learned up until this point. There's lots of guys that are starting out that are much smaller than I've grown to, that don't know a lot of the things that I know. Why should I gatekeep that information and not share that with the world, you know? So I came up with the idea in September. I hired another coach to help me start the coaching business. I worked with that guy for a bit. I'm on my second coach now. I've been working with him for a while, but I just launched in, what was it? What are we in now? We're in the end of July. I think I launched end of April.
Okay.
Yes. Mid end of April. I had just kind of started doing it. 2024. Yes. So just around April 2024, I really started getting into it, and I actually got my first client, Salim from Vera Drywall. I'm still working with him. Been working with him for a bit. We actually got hooked up through.
Salim from where?
From Vera Drywall.
Vera Drywall, and that's in your area?
Yeah, actually, he's in Ontario, so he's where my drywall company is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's actually kind of close by. We kind of got hooked up through a taper that used to tape for me, and this guy was trying to get his own business going, and said, "Hey, you should reach out to Doug McKenzie. I know that guy. I worked for him, and he could probably help you out, get things going." So I started working with Salim, and in the background was creating my new program. So Salim was working for the union, and his big goal was to get away from subcontracting for the union and start doing his own jobs.
Okay.
Well, since he started working with me and started putting everything in the place that I've taught him, he hasn't really had to do a union job since.
Beautiful.
And his sales have like almost grown 5x. He went from 22,000 in April to 44,000 in May to 96,000 in June.
Dig it.
We just built a good little foundation for him.
With all of the clientele that you're going to get from the Drywall Podcast, what's my kickback?
Let's we'll have to discuss that.
We'll take it offline. We'll take it offline.
Yeah.
No, I don't care, man. You know what I've found is everyone's success is my success. And that sounds cliche and maybe, lame, but it's true. I feel that in my heart of hearts, especially the drywall community, man. I want to see people become successful if they can hook up with you and find a quicker path to success. Then I'm all for it. Also the fact that you're branching out. It's never easy to branch out and do something new. You're making money doing commercial. You don't need to put together some curriculum for drywall people, there's an opportunity to make money there as well, but I don't think you'd be a good coach if you weren't making money. So, take me through if I'm interested, or I'm interested in what Doug McKenzie has to offer, what would be a route that I would go to get in touch with you or talk to you? Salim, talk to you. Are you still, I guess just take me through that a little bit if I was curious and wanted to talk to you about it.
The easiest way to talk to me is just reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at Real Doug McKenzie. You can reach out to me there, and we can jump on a call and I can run you through kind of what we're offering. We've got, I think, 6 or 8 clients now. What have we got now? I think 8 clients now that we're working with. So
since Celine, you got 8 clients. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I started working with him and just started pulling everything out of my head and creating a curriculum, with him, working one-to-one, seeing what problems he had and just going through things. And now I've created this whole 12-week program that just builds a really solid foundation for your business, helps you understand the numbers, the markup and margin, your estimating, and just dives into all of that so that you can grow your business without killing yourself, because the business side is really difficult for a lot of people, right? Everybody wants more leads, but what do you do when you get more leads? You've got to be able to price the work. You got to price it profitably. You got to be able to hire people to handle the extra work. And I feel like that's where everybody struggles. All drywallers that I know, they're the best at what they do, right? Every taper I know, he's the best. So they already know how to do the work. It's that business side of things that they struggle with. And
Trimtex got it wrong when they didn't have me as Drywall Artist of the Year. Still a little bitter about that, but we're all the best. Except for maybe when it comes to pricing. And I've talked to people about episodes of the Drywall Podcast, and people really like the money conversation. And that's one of the primary areas where people tend to be a little guarded is around pricing. And I feel like that's where we need to be really open with each other about and that's going to help raise the bar, which is what the union does. In my opinion, that's what the union's always been very good at, is setting the standard for, and then everybody's cheaper after that. And the union primarily does commercial, so they're in that commercial space. So one thing that was occurring to me is that, so Doug's he's a systems guy. You did the residential, you created systems. That was, lost its luster. You wanted a challenge. So then you jump into commercial. Now you create systems for commercial. And in order to do that, you hook up with this profit for contractors sort of company. You learn some stuff there, and then maybe you hire a couple of coaches on your own because you want to refine this maybe a new system for teaching other people what you've learned, and that's just another system. So for what I can glean from this conversation, you're very good at coming up with systems.
Yeah.
That would be enough sales for me to be intrigued about this course academy. I love the word academy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Two questions I always ask at the end of an episode is something that you've learned recently that you didn't think would help your business. It can be the new business or in your commercial or residential, last 6 months, a year that you thought would totally not work, but you tried it and it works so well that you can't imagine doing it any other way.
Something I've learned recently.
That
Kind
like
of bugging.
you thought was like that's stupid. Maybe you knew about it for a while and you for whatever reason you tried it reluctantly and now it's just this fabulous new system that you use.
I will say the power of social media.
Okay.
Everybody talks about the power of social media, and I never really wanted to get into it. I was
Yeah.
terrified to put myself in front of a camera. I never did it with my drywall company. I won Drywallers of the Year. I could have capitalized on that,
Totally.
and I didn't because I just was in my shell. And now doing this coaching thing, putting myself out there, it is
You have
insane
to.
the response I've had, right? And I haven't
Yeah.
had any hate. I haven't had anybody say anything bad. Everybody's like super intrigued and wanting to be a part of it. So that's been awesome. And like
Great.
they say, just get in front of the camera and do it. And I finally did it. And now it's like, it's super easy, right? I'm sure if you go back and look at some of my first videos, they're horrible, but I
Yeah.
just keep doing it and getting better. And like the power of that and the reach that it's had has been awesome. I've already created a ton of good relationships. Well, literally that's how I ended up here, right? On
Yeah,
this
yeah, of
podcast.
course. Of course. Yeah, yeah, because it wasn't, and when you sparked my memory about the drywall artist, I remember like Joe Koenig talking about you, and I remember seeing they have like placards and I
Yeah.
remember seeing the name Doug McKenzie. I was like, oh, it's that guy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not from social media. From social media, I was like, oh, he's doing like coaching for
Yeah.
drywallers. Like, that's cool. I want to interview that guy and find out a little bit more about that and hear your story, which we now know. This is super
Yeah.
cool. Have you done live videos on social?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, give
I
that a
haven't.
whirl.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
let
I've
people jump on.
no, you go live and you just
I go
talk
live
about
and people,
yeah,
yeah. Like,
you're walking through a job or maybe at a training or something, or you're working with somebody. Like
yeah.
that would be, I'm just spitballing or whatever,
Oh,
but
that'd be great.
live video is really good, and then it blows up your algorithm because they want to encourage people to go live.
Okay.
I'll go live and walk through a job about fresco harmony, especially a big
Yeah.
one or something.
Yeah.
But it's nerve-wracking to go live because you're live. Like people are
Yeah.
seeing you real time and there's no
Yeah.
editing.
There's no editing. You can't cut
Yeah.
anything out.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
just
It's
live.
just you.
The other question is a pearl of wisdom that you could bestow on the drywall community. What would that be?
Honestly, like the best advice I can give to the drywall community, anybody that's in business, is know markup and margin. I feel like nobody knows that and everybody needs to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really intrigued about that aspect, and you touched
Yeah.
on it a little bit, but I still don't
Yeah.
have my brain. I don't have, my brain's not wrapped around it, and it's like, you know, that might be a good like teaser to give away for you. I don't know, but that's a
I was
good.
just gonna say I'm gonna share my video training on markup and margin. You put me on the spot, and it is a tricky little thing. So I'm gonna share
Yeah,
my video
yeah.
training on that. Maybe we can give that away to everybody.
Well, because it inspired you. Like
Yeah.
that tidbit inspired you in the commercial, like whenever it was, to be like, oh, I'm not making any profit. Like I get it now. I have to
Yeah.
run these numbers X, Y, and Z so that I can add this 4% or whatever we came up with
Yes.
to create that freaking how much I want to make. And then you
Yeah.
determine how much you want to make. It's not about your worth. It's less
Yes.
about like oh, I'm only worthy of $1 a square foot. It's like, no, 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 no. There's actually a
A
formula.
process.
And if you stick with that formula, you're not gouging. You're just,
No.
this is what you should get.
You're covering
Simple.
your costs. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
figuring out what your profit is at the end of the year. You should be figuring out what your profit is at the start of the year and figuring out this formula. I know exactly what I'm going to make on a job before it starts. Like exactly. Like it's right on this line item, like exactly what we're going to make. As long as we run the job efficiently and we don't go over budget on things, then like this is the amount we have at the end of the job, and it covers all of our costs, pays my wage, makes the business a 10% profit, all of that wrapped up into one. Cool. It's a simple mathematical formula.
Very cool. So, and I think markup and margin, something like that, if somebody could wrap their brain around, that might encourage them to take another step toward hiring a coach, or looking more closely at a program that could help my business make more money. That's an investment that I can get behind. Something.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Very cool. Doug McKenzie. McKenzie Drywall Inc. and Drywall CEO Academy just started April 2024. You already have several clients rolling, and I'm very anxious to see where you go with all that. Thank you so much for being on the Drywall Podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
What a pleasure, man. Really appreciate it. Great conversation. And we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch.
Okay, good chatting with you.
Huge shout out to Doug McKenzie for being with us on the Drywall Podcast today. If you are inclined to getting a hold of Doug and inquiring about his class or doing this course, I would love to hear from you about that and your experience. I'm excited to see where he goes with this whole thing. Guests of the Drywall Podcast will receive a sweet swag bucket from our friends at CSR, filled with lots of cool CSR swag, amongst other drywall goodies. Today's episode of the Drywall Podcast is brought to you by our friends at SurPro Stilts. If you are looking for an iconic drywall brand that stands the test of time, stand with SurPro. Elevate your safety, comfort, and performance with the leader in stilts. Visit stilts.com and elevate your game. Thank you so much for tuning into the Drywall Podcast today. I sincerely appreciate it. I hope you all have an amazing weekend, and remember, keep drywalling.